because Trump has for over a year now been deconstructing our national security infrastructure, replacing experience and expertise with loyalists and partisan vitriol. Since taking office, the president has gutted the National Security Division at DOJ and fired thousands of experienced employees at the State Department, draining our agencies of expertise. This administration has no real interest in protecting our national security from Chinese threats or otherwise. This is a big business money-making operation for the people in power. It's up to us, Congress, to take action to truly protect against strategic threats from China while preventing discrimination against American citizens. I encourage all of my colleagues to reject this legislation, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back without objection. All other opening statements and Trump derangement rants will be included in the record.
Mr. Chairman, what's a deranged Trump rant? Did you call the president deranged?
No,
it sounded like you called the president deranged. I know a lot of psychiatrists are saying that, but they're not allowed.
That's how far this disorder affects your hearing and your reasoning, Mr. Raskin. Reflect on what I actually said.
I thought Trump derangement syndrome was following a deranged man in whatever he says.
Gentleman is not in order. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment in the nature of a substitute makes technical corrections and substantive changes to some provisions.
First, does the gentleman wish to introduce the...
Yes, I have an amendment at the desk. Excuse me.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1468.
Without objection, the amendment in the nature of a substitute will be considered as read and shall be considered as base text for the purpose of amendment.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas to explain the amendment.
Thank you. And the earlier derangement threw off my procedural knowledge. I apologize. This amendment in the nature of a substitute makes technical corrections and substantive changes to some provisions to better serve the stated goals and objectives of the bill. This includes the substitution of provisions restricting the DOJ's discretionary authority. Additionally, the reporting requirements have been amended to include agencies with relevant expertise in subject matters covered by the report. And these amendments were made with the aim of providing necessary clarity, avoiding interagency and internal conflict, and enhancing and strengthening the reporting capabilities of the DOJ while providing more opportunities for interagency cooperation. One of the complaints 2 years ago was that our bill did not work with the DOJ, and that's because the DOJ didn't want to work with us. And so I heard your complaints, and we answered them by working with the DOJ to get language that everyone is on the same page with respect to the administration. And I will yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there any discussion on the amendment in the nature of a substitute? Gentlelady from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, I have to oppose this bill from my friend in Texas. I do have serious concerns about this. It would reestablish the China Initiative, which is a failed Trump-era program that targeted Chinese government agents stealing U.S. intellectual property. But in reality, the DOJ targeted research universities and defense contractors for minor infractions instead of actual threats to national security and intellectual property rights. DOJ already can and does prosecute cases of economic espionage and trade secret theft, but this legislation is not just unnecessary, it would actually set us back. And look, I represent a district that has a lot of Chinese Americans and has very strong ties through trade, import, export, and other things to the Pacific region. Chinese immigrants were actually the first Asians to settle in Seattle, in my area. And they arrived in the 1860s from California or directly from China. And we have been dealing with anti-Asian hate in our state and across the country for a long time. The China Initiative just enhanced that, exacerbated it. It was not just racist, but it was horribly ineffective. Despite thousands of investigations, only 150 individuals were even charged pursuant to the initiative, and only a quarter of those charged were actually charged for economic espionage. Still more of the cases were dismissed for lack of evidence or, in the rare case of a conviction, overturned on appeal. What we actually saw is that Chinese and Asian American scientists, academics, researchers were the ones who bore the brunt of the China Initiative. Many of the people that were charged under this effort were academics and researchers who were accused of omitting details on their immigration paperwork or grant applications. And those issues would almost certainly never be charged absent the initiative driving a racist targeting of these individuals to pad the, quote, success numbers of the China Initiative. There were a couple of directly impacted individuals. I can give you the cases here. Professor Gang Chen, former head of MIT's Department of Mechanical Engineering, was subjected to a year-long investigation under the China Initiative. Dr. Chen had his, quote, loyalty questioned, which is something that, frankly, many of us as immigrants often have, no matter how long we've been in this country. But he had his, quote, loyalty questioned during a press conference, and he was scapegoated as a national security threat. But in 2022, the DOJ dropped all charges against Dr. Chen. But it doesn't take away the harm that Dr. Chen went through. He said, according to Dr. Chen, for 37 days, his family and he went through a living hell. That's how he described it. And the impact of that is going to last for a long time. Similarly, Professor Anming Hu at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville was the first academic to stand trial under the China Initiative. After an initial visit from the FBI in 2018, he was charged in early 2020 for fraud and false statements, and the trial took place in June of 2021. When the jury deadlocked, the judge declared a mistrial and the government sought a second trial. That trial never occurred because the judge issued a full acquittal on the basis that the government failed to meet its evidentiary burden. Now, today's renamed initiative does nothing to protect intellectual property rights or national security interests, but it does drive away talent from the United States, and it drains us of our STEM leaders and other academics. An Asian American Scholar Forum study of over 1,300 respondents found that as a result of the China Initiative, 61% felt pressure to leave the United States, despite the vast majority of respondents wanting to stay and contribute to our science and technology fields. And the racial profiling, as the ranking member said, does spur anti-Asian hate, which has already been on the rise since COVID. Nearly 13,000 incidents of anti-Asian hate, including hate crimes, have been reported in the last 6 years, and that's likely a vast underestimation because so many of those hate crimes just don't get reported. The Biden-Harris administration was right to end the initiative, and we have to prevent its return for the sake of our research institutions and also to prevent the racial profiling of Chinese individuals that utterly lacks any legitimate national security justification. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there further discussion on the ANS? Seeing none, the question is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute. This will be followed immediately by a vote on reporting the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. The question is now on favorably adopting the bill as amended. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair,